Yes, after lunch. Why did I sign up for this again? Can somebody remind me? No, this is going to be fun. I work for a massive analyst company. Anybody heard of Gartner? Yay, that's a good start. Now, so you know, we write about everything in the industry. Predictions, you name it. Software licenses, trends, differences in technology, how you use it in companies. And I have condensed all of that for you to 20 minutes, of which I've already used 1 minute of introduction. So everybody knows this, right? This is the Gartner hype cycle. We're famous for that. We look at technologies, stuff that we see happening, and then we plot them. We basically say, hey, this looks interesting. Something cool is going to happen with this. And then we plot it so that companies and people like you can see kind of when it hits for real. Because technology always goes through cycles. First, there's a hype. People love it, but still it's useless. And then suddenly, finally, it becomes usable. And that's the second part of the graph where the hype kind of has died down, but stuff becomes reliable. And we plot all kinds of cool stuff on there. This is the one of last year. The new one's almost going to come out in July. For example, virtual reality is here. Augmented reality is kind of going through a little bit of a dip. But on top of that, you'll notice machine learning. And of course, that's what we hear about everywhere around us. But that's kind of fun, but it's like technology, right? It's techie stuff. And yeah, it makes sense to know when things like machine learning hit the main stage, but it doesn't really tell you what happens. It doesn't give you a feeling for that. So that's what I would like to go into, because there's a million things happening. That digital disruption, you'll hear all these conversations. You hear about self-driving cars. You'll hear about self-tuning software. That's happening all around us, and we believe that is increasing. The risk for you as a company is increasing. If you don't pay attention, you'll be left by the side of the road. So there's two things you need to do to survive. On the one end, you need to continuously scan for what's really going on. You need to have your eyes wide open and look at everything. It used to be that you just watch your competitors and see what they're doing, and you kind of know where the market is, but today, Google may be your competitor. So you look at Google, you look at startups, you look at people in neighboring industries, you look at different countries, you look at what government is doing, all kinds of channels you want to use to simply have a radar for what's coming down the line. And that's what I will spend most of my talk about today, is I will give you 10 predictions. And predictions are fun because they give a direction and you can never be wrong because they're a prediction. So at this point, they're for sure true. We build these predictions with pretty good rigor. So we have a wide network of people. We kind of analyze what is behind the prediction, and we build it back up so that we are quite certain on how realistic something is and how likely something is to happen. So these predictions are not just my predictions, they're really Gartner's predictions. The second thing you can do is you can, of course, prepare your organization. So the one is you need to scan, see what's happening, and the second is you need to actually prepare. Because if you know there's a storm coming, you better build a pretty strong boat. And that you need to do regardless. And I'll spend a little bit of time on that. I could probably spend a day on that topic alone, but I'll give you a little hint of the type of things that winners do. And then I'll have an overall theme. So together, if you do these things, scan and then actually prepare, you will kind of ride the wave. Then disruption is not a scary, crazy thing, but you can turn it into something that's actually good for your company. And that's then the optimistic message that will pull you out of that after lunch dip for sure. And then I kind of cheated, I have to admit. I named my deck The Human Dimension of Digital Disruption. Why did I do that? It's because of this. We can talk about technology all we want, but the impact today is what it means to our lives, when things are to disrupt our lives. Because technology is interesting and there's lots of changes and innovations happening and things are being invented. But if you really want to know about the impact of technology, you have to translate it to what it means to the human being, to you as an individual, to you as a consumer, to you as an employee, to you as a manager. And that is the interesting part of technology, because that's the unpredictable part. I give you a piece of technology and nobody can really predict what you're going to do with it. I can only give it to you and see what you do with it. And that's, of course, what we're trying to do today. We're trying to explore by giving lots of technology to lots of people and then see what works. Example, if you have a Oculus Rift and a Google Glass and a Microsoft HoloLens, they're all similar type things with head-up display that do something with virtual augmented reality. But how they're being adopted, how they're being used, how people perceive them is wildly different. And I could have given you these three tools, these three pieces of technology, and you would not have been able to predict which one is going to make it big and which one is not. So that's an interesting thing. So throughout this talk, I'd like you to keep in mind, think about the human dimension of this. There are three sources of disruption. One is this engagement that we say experience in the digital world is different and it's really addictive. We know this already from social media and mobile phones. Is going to accelerate 100 times over. The second is businesses are going to use these technologies and innovate radically, much more grand thinking than we are doing today. And then third, the secondary effects are going to be much larger. So technology always evolves one step at a time. First we have self-driving cars, and then we say, oh, self-driving cars are fun because I can drive to work with my arms crossed. But then what about infrastructure? What does it mean to retail? What does it mean to logistics? What does it mean to city design? What does it mean to health? What does it mean to our perception of location? Only the secondary effects are much larger in the world. So that's what with lots of these technologies is the case. For each of these, when you see these disruptions, they're on your radar, you need to do some things. You need to recognize them, see that they are potentially disruptive. You need to prioritize them because you cannot do everything. You need to see, what do I do first? This thing is coming down the line, now what do I do? And then you need to respond. You need to actually do something. Once you spot a disruption, you need to define your response. And that's kind of how I will go through this. So the first one is this digital experience. And hold on to your seat, guys. I'm going to go through 10 of these. So here we go. One is, by 2020, we think 100 million customers will shop in augmented reality. So if you're in retail, this is going to be reality here. 100 million customers are going to be right there. And how do we know that? We already see this. Augmented reality games are sort of the first inkling of this. And what do? First, you go with a smartphone because that's the current platform. And then you go head-mounted displays and then tablets. What do? Start experimenting, do stuff with augmented reality shopping because that's where it is. And we say by this year, end of this year, 1 of 5 of the global leading retail brands will actually do things with augmented reality. So here's a prediction. If you're making a strategy, invest in this. Second one, who do you actually talk to? Who here has recently talked to a device? Cool. I do it every day. I have Amazon Alexa at home, which is the Amazon box that you can talk to interact with it. And you can do things like say, hello, play me some music, or look up the weather, tell me the news, keep a shopping list, order some things, things like that. And it's really nice. And when I introduced that thing into my home, my kids loved it. My kids started talking to her. She's called Alexa. And within 5 minutes, they were chatting away. And she can do jokes, and they were asking all kinds of things. Can you go to school with me? Where did you grow up? And Alexa has a response to all of that. And then we had to go shopping, and my son of 8 said, can Alexa come shopping with us? Because it was completely natural for him to refer to the thing as a her, and also to include her in shopping. So this is really coming. How do we know this? We're seeing some voice-first interactions already. People are starting to build this. You see all the tech vendors investing in this. So this is a first flag that we already see. How do? What do you do first? Well, you want to have some sort of conversational user interface. It doesn't necessarily have to be voice. It doesn't have to be automated, but at least some way in which you can have conversations. Chat functions, chat help desk. It doesn't matter. Start experimenting with that. Then build bots, and then do the real machine learning that's behind it. Finally, your response needs to be, how do we do this in our industry? What does voice and conversation look like in our industry? And can we build the APIs that plug into other people's platforms? Think about it strategically. What if your service or product is hidden behind the interface of Amazon Alexa? What does that mean to you as a brand? First thing we already see some websites that are experimenting with this and that are being voice-enabled, which is a cool thing if you ask me. Another thing we predicted already is that apps are sort of on their demise. So we say that by 2019, 20% of brands will actually abandon building apps altogether. This is kind of a bummer if you're in the app development business, sorry. But apps are not a great investment. It's too much hassle to build something that's too specific. So what are companies moving towards? Mobile web. Of course, we want to be mobile web, work through every device, every channel, doesn't really matter. And only then, after that, we will build smart mobile apps and expired apps. We will say, okay, let's move away from apps that we have, but let's invest heavily on mobile web. And that's what we see across brand, across companies. Then an interesting one. I've always asked myself about this. in 2020, we say that algorithms will have an impact on the actual behavior of 1 billion workers worldwide. Now, what does that mean? If you get to work in the morning, what do? I know. You open your email, right? That's what work's defined by email. You go to work, you open your email. That's work. But what if the best time for you to do your email is actually at 5 p.m. and 9 a.m. in the morning is actually the best time for you to do creative stuff? Wouldn't it be nice if the technology was there to help you find out when you're most productive, to help you find out how you could best interact with people? And we're already starting to see that. There's great bots that analyze your communication style and that can recommend how I should communicate with you. Should I be fact-based or story-based? Should I focus on feelings or should I focus on the relationship? That's a recommendation that can already be fed to you through technology. And we say that by 2020, 1 billion people will be influenced by tools like that. They will use algorithms based on behavior, psychology, and cognitive science to influence what you do, to make you make the right decisions and spend your time more productively. So what do you do? First, you catalog. How does that work? What do we do? Then you broker them. You say, let's find the place where they work and sell them and share them with others. And then ultimately, you want to protect your algorithms, because how you do that ultimately defines how your business is structured and what you do. So how do you do talent retention? How do you make sure that you become smart or stay smart as a company? It's to really build it into the system. Don't rely on singular people anymore, but build it into the system. And not just the system of technology, but the system of technology and people and the processes around it. Second big theme, we will see business innovation happen when this technology is taken to a higher level, where we take sort of regular, boring technology concepts and turn them into magic. Wouldn't that be nice? For example, if we take something like validation and voting and cryptology and transactions, it sounds boring. It's stuff that you manage, and it's a process that needs to be governed. But then magic is, we could create visibility, and there we would create a community of people that like and trust each other. There is privacy and trust that we can create, which are very high human values. And that's when we start to translate stuff that we are used to working in IT departments to stuff that really matters to the human being. So if you look at blockchain, we expect that 2022, there will be at least one $10 billion blockchain company, which is Facebook, Google size company. And that's already what you see. In Silicon Valley, there are venture capitalists that are investing in everything blockchain just because they know one of them is going to hit big. And we believe that. So today, blockchain is kind of immature. You don't want to bet your corporate jewels on that. You don't want to say, oh, let's throw away our own transaction systems and build it on the blockchain, because that'd be kind of stupid. But still, the technology is here, and it's advancing. So what do? You want to do some ledger experiments. How do you do transactions? How do you do things? And then over time, you want to move into smart contracts where you can automate your interactions and you can automate your value exchanges. So if you do these roadmaps and you want to do something and you want to execute on them, think of the usability to date and how efficiently you can do them. What we already see, by this end of this year, we already see blockchains being deployed across industries. Sometimes experimental, sometimes already for real, if not critical appliances. And then these digital giants. We nicely do our own little thing. We run our business, we run our startup, we have our strategy, and then suddenly Google is our competitor. And that happened to more companies than we would like. Travel companies, music companies, phone companies, car companies. They suddenly woke up one morning and realized, whoops, there's a giant in the room. And there's more of these. Some of them are very famous, Google, Amazon, and Facebook, and Apple we all know. But then the big ones that are kind of sneaking up on us are, of course, Alibaba, Tencent, and Baidu. All from China. And China is going big, so you bet that they're going to play an important part of your role. We even go so far as saying by 2021 that 20% of all the things that you do as an individual will involve at least one of these top 7 digital giants. That's a fairly significant part of your life, of shopping, of living, of health, of making decisions, of going to school, transportation. 20% of the things you do, the decisions you make, will be at some point touching one of these digital giants. So as a business, that's going to be your context. You need to at least recognize them. Who are they? You need to prioritize, so go digital, make sure that you play in their game. Then you want to make it programming so that you can actually compete with them, and then you want to make it smart so that you can actually sometimes overtake them. And you have to make a decision. Do I want to join them? Do I want to beat them at their own game? Do I want to advance ahead of them, or do I want to become part of their ecosystem? And you have to set a goal for that. And then these secondary effects. We always love innovation, and this whole conference is innovation. And we say, put all our money in innovation. Well, sorry to say, here's a reality call. We say that every dollar that we invest in innovation will need $7 in core execution, which is getting the stuff up and running and stable and realizing it for real. So that's your reality. You need to think back and say, how bad is stuff? Do we really need to fix this thing, yes or no? So modernize, innovate, and then transformation. Not the other way around. It's a very important thing, and we overlook that. We all love to look forward. The reality is here. And then we said Internet of Things is really going to take off. And we say 2021, 1 million Internet of Things devices is going to be bought and installed every hour. That's massive. So then we think, ooh, that's going to mean massive data centers and lots of data. It's not true. We say that 2020, Internet of Things will actually increase it only by less than 3%, which means data is going to be managed distributively. It's going to be managed at the source. There's lots of distributed data that's going to happen. So how are you going to deal with that? What data do you actually want to filter up? How do you make distributed decision models that work in your ecosystem? It's a great model, but it's different than what we're used to. We're used to sucking up all the data centrally and then making decisions on them, but now we need to do that in this new model. So how are you going to do that? And then we say it's going to save us tons of money in maintenance and services. This is kind of a prediction that's easy to make. So if you're not in Internet of Things, already go that way. And we say people are wearing healthcare bands. Are people wearing healthcare bands here? We're going very far. We say 40% of all employees will be required or strongly incentivized to wear one. Now that's a cultural thing, right? In the United States, very likely. In France, not so very likely. But on average, across industries, across markets, across the globe, we say that 40% of employees will be wearing a device. Now, what does that mean to you? So, what are we doing? How are we sort of pulling people into the system? How are we going to use that for an organization? So these are the 10. This is the scanning part. 10 quite ambitious predictions, right? If you're really making strategy in these areas, this is what you want to go to. So how do the leaders prepare for this? How do digital leaders prepare for all these things? Well, we asked them. We said, well, what are you really doing? And there's 5 lessons, and I will run through them very quickly. 79% say we can't do this alone. We need to work in an ecosystem. So if you're here, make your connections. Find competitors, friends, neighboring industries, exchange business cards, and set meetings. 47% say data. We invest heavily in business intelligence, analytics, anything related to data, because that's where we will make a difference. 40% say, if this digital thing is going to be critical to us, we need to do this in-house. Not outsourced, not distributed to others. This is the key thing that we need to do. Therefore, we will build it ourselves. 78% engage with startups. If you're a startup, prepare to be swamped in attention. And 68% have professionalized their innovation approach. They have recognized that there is an exploration way of innovating and that there's an optimizing way of innovating, and that you need to do both as a company. And 68% of companies are already doing this. So if you have not professionalized how you innovate, if you've not built the funnel of scan to execution, probably you're going to be left out in the cold. And then as a final remark, see how easy it is to get caught up in technology? Because we look at all these trends and we say, oh, look, there's cool stuff happening in technology. The real question is, when does innovation become disruption? When does it touch you as a human being, and when does it change your life? And that's what you aim for. When change touches your heart, that's when it starts to take off. And every time again, you see successful tech companies, the moment they touch somebody for real, you get an emotion, you get an impact in real life, that's when they take off. And then the counterpart of that is, how much of that disruption could you handle? If I start to change how you do banking, how you interact with the business, how you change your transportation, how you change health, how you change education, how you change cooking and lifestyle, how you change living, how you change how you interact with your colleagues, and I start messing with everything, people would go crazy. So we got to think about that. What do we want as society? What do you want? And then ultimately, the decision to make here today, if you listen to all these stories, is you have to build your own narrative. You have to create a story that you can tell others of what you believe the future to be, so that you can pull people along and that you can influence the future by putting your values and your priorities onto society. This is not a time where you can sit back and digest. If you're in this space, you want to build a story that's coherent, and you want to continuously tune it, so that when you meet people out there, you can pitch it. You can say, I believe, and there comes your pitch. And that, in my mind, is how digital disruption becomes real. Thank you very much.